and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining me again. I've got a Hero Arts Christmas Village bridge card to share with you today. I absolutely love this die. It's such a beautiful Christmas die. And I've turned this card into a bridge card, so as you can see it goes nice and flat. It's fairly easy to make, I think. And I would start by taking a screenshot of this because these are all the measurements of cardstock that you will need. I do make 2 layers of each of my pieces just for the extra strength and stability, but you don't have to do that. So I'm starting with my base and I am ink blending with Distress Oxide Tumbled Glass, Broken China, and some Memento Nautical Blue and Paris Dusk inks. Once I had that all done, I used these Kuretake Starry Colors, and I'm going to use the last 3. So I'm just getting them wet, and then I'm also spraying with water my card base there. And I actually sprayed that a couple of times. I really wanted to get a very starry feel to this card. Plus, those starry color paints just give so much shine and shimmer. It's really quite pretty. So I'm just going to start with that silver one, that silver paint there, and spatter that on. And I tried for small drops and big drops, just a mix of everything in between. So I went high and low with my paintbrush when I'm splattering it on, just to get the different size drops. I actually have got paint everywhere. You can see it on the background there. It's everywhere. It's all over my heat gun. It's everywhere. So I have a big cleanup to do. And this is that lighter golds that I'm doing now. As you can see, when I ink blended, I did not bother doing the center lower part of the card. It's totally covered by the die cut, so you don't need to worry about that. So here, now that it's all dry, you need to crease from 1 inch in on the left and at 2 inches in, and then exactly the same on the right hand side. So I just tend to rotate this and do it again at 1 inch and 2 inches. And then to crease that inner crease you want to fold towards the middle. And then I usually crease it on the front and back just to really make sure it's a good crease. And then you fold away from the center. So you're actually making a Z fold here. So into the center here. And then away from the center. And that gives you the base of the card. And usually I work those edges a little bit. So here is that die. It's just beautiful. I've got a few more ideas of what to do with this one, and I just can't wait to get at it. So I started by doing some ink blending on my pieces of cardstock. This is going to be cracked pistachio for the lower level, peacock feathers for the middle level, and shaded lilac for the church level, the back level. And I just lined my dies up near the top edge, just so I knew I was going to fit everything on. And then I spritzed these with water and dried them off again as well. Now I've cut 1 inch strips of cardstock here, and I've put double-sided adhesive along the fold line. I've creased them in half and put the tape along the fold line. And then I trimmed them down just right alongside the tape. I just find that's easier than trying to crease a 1/2 inch piece of cardstock and then put the tape on, and I just don't know. I do the 1 inch and then I trim it. So I've done that on the 2 lower levels on both sides of them. And now I'm going to glue down this shaded lilac level, or the church level as I like to call it, onto the middle of my card base there. Now, if it doesn't fit quite into it, you can't fold the flaps down, just trim the edges of that church die cut piece, just so that you can make sure all the edges will fold down. You'll never notice if it's a little bit shy of the edge, but you will notice if it's too wide. Now, to get these 2 lower levels, I have taken the backing off this tab and I am lining up the bottom, and the tab goes along that church level and I'm just creasing it down. Then this lower cracked pistachio level, I'm taking the release paper off, and again, I will line up the bottom and make sure the tab lines up next to the peacock feathers level. And then I can press that down. So those two are in place. And just make sure that it's creased well. And then you want to flatten out that right flap and these two tabs. Flatten them out, take the release paper off, and then just make sure the bottom edges are nicely lined up. And once you've got those lined up where you want them, then you can fold the right flap back down against those tabs, and it will pick up the adhesive. And then you've got everything lined up in exactly the right spot. So there you go. I had to redo this section. You can tell I've put those little trees in down there. So I had to redo this. It didn't turn out on the first video, so I've redone this part for you. And I've added those trees, and they're from the die cuts. Just FYI. So to make this the bridge part now, it's the snowflake border. I am using Deco foil in Silver Star. Now, I did this without a laminator or a foiling machine, so don't panic. If you don't have those, you don't need them. I'll show you what I did. You need a piece of cardstock that is will bridge from the left side when it's folded flat all the way to the right side when it's out, flattened out as well. So the left side is folded in, the right side is out, and that ends up being 6 1/4 inches. Now, the height of that is going to depend on the die you have. I do not have a snowflake border die. I had to borrow this from a friend. So I'm going to show you a couple of other options here because I've got a snowflake border die coming, but it hasn't arrived. And I'm just dying for it to get here because I think it'd be really pretty. So here I am using some die cut and bond, and I'm attaching my pieces of cardstock. Because I'm doing the 2 layers of this border, I have 2 pieces of cardstock there. You could use Stick-It or any double-sided adhesive for this. It's just a double-sided adhesive that you need. So here I've removed the backing paper and I've cut my piece of Deco foil, and I'm just going to carefully put that down, and you pray that you don't get any creases in it. Sometimes you can work the creases out if you have them. So I've done my sentiment here, and I used MFT's Holiday Biddy Holiday Wishes, I think it's called, that piece on earth, and I embossed it with Hero Art's silver embossing powder. And I'm just making sure everything lines up here and fits, and I'm trying to center that snowflake border, make sure I've got room for my sentiment on the bottom. And then I ran that through the die cutting machine and cut the edges to match up with the die, so I had a bit of a border. Now, because I did that second piece, I'm just removing the release paper here, and then I can line this up with my die and press everything in place once it's all lined up, and that just gives it a little more strength, especially for that bridge piece. I feel like it would be good to do 2 layers for this one. So I'm showing you here because I didn't have this die. I thought, well, what else could I have done? And I had the stars. You could do that and then add the stars to the background. I had these snowflakes, but they weren't really a border die. So they might work. And then I had these, I think that's Elizabeth Craft snowflakes, but I've got Simon Says Stamped snowflakes too. There's so many snowflake dies out there that I'm sure you've got something that you could use in your collection. But all of those would work. I'm sure you could find something. Now, to attach this, I put glue on the left flap and also on the right flap. And you want to then line up that, I'm pushing that left flap in and the right flap out. And just making sure that those edges line up. And I had to sort of pinch it and hold it for a little bit here. And there I've got the sentiment glued on. Out of that scrap Deco foil paper that I had, that cardstock, I cut those stars and snowflakes, and I've added some Studio Katia iridescent snowflakes onto this as well, so you can see them there. Now, this piece is for the back. You could just write your message on the back, but I just prefer the flap. I like somewhere a little extra to do a message. So this piece is 5.5 by, I think it's 4.25 inches, and I'm creasing it at the 5-inch mark. So just a 1/2 inch crease. And then I've put some double-sided adhesive on that, and all you have to do is make sure you have the top and then add the flap to the top. And just make sure it's stuck down. And so that is the card. Now, this envelope that I've got is for a 5x7 card. So it's actually 7.25 inches wide by 5.25 inches tall. And as you can see, that card fits in really easily. If you're going to mail it, it would fit. I might, well, I don't know. I think it would be okay just as is. You might want to put it in a padded envelope. I'm not sure. But that's the card. Just really quite a fun card. So I hope you'll give this a try. It's a great way to use that die. Thanks so much for joining me.